Okay, so today we're doing the third Instar larval neuromuscular junction prep using the magnetic pin chambers. And you can see I put the larva down with a little liquid, but I'm going to pull all that off because it's easier to manipulate the larva when there's no liquid around. So I use the pins and I turn them around, and I'm going to pin the tail first, and I'm going to pin it with the tracheal tubes facing up. So it's dorsal side up right now, ventral side down. And you pin the tail first and then the head. If you try the opposite way around, the animal will flail quite a bit. And occasionally the pin's downward pressure isn't quite right and you'll lose one of the sides of the animal. So once we have them pinned down, we're just going to then go about perfusing in some saline. In our case, this is going to be either HL 3.1 or Schneider's is what we typically dissect in. And we'll do about 3 exchanges of the saline, with each time being probably about 700 microliters of solution, and that's just to kind of get yeast and food and particulates off the animal and out of the chamber before we start dissecting open the animal. And then we rotate the chamber. Now, I'm right-handed, so I rotate the chamber to my left so that the anterior head is to my left and the posterior tail is to my right. And then I'm going to come in with our Vanna scissors, and I'm going to make 2 incisions that are going part way through that larval tube, probably about halfway. Obviously, don't want to cut the whole way through, it'll just be released from the pins. And then once we have that, we turn the scissors, and we're going to basically make an incision right up in between those tracheal tube kind of railroad tracks that you can see running the length of the animal. Use them as my guide. Now here it's super critical to keep the scissors high, especially that downward, that point, that lowest point on the scissors. You don't want to let it get down and start poking the body wall muscles on the ventral side, because those are the ones that we're going to be imaging. And so we don't want to damage them. So then once I've made that, I actually push the pins together a little bit, and the point of that is to get some of the stomach and heart vessel and trachea to come away from the body wall, and you can start perfusing saline in and out. And I might do about 3 perfusions here again. Sometimes if you get lucky on one of your intakes of the saline, you'll suck out quite a bit of this material we need to get out of her way, and you can see there that was the case. But there's still some remaining. You can see these 2 main trachea, and there's probably some gut and probably a little bit of heart vessel. So we're just going to carefully pick those out. And I usually start grabbing them down here because at the posterior end, because at the anterior end is the important muscles that we're going to be really evaluating. So as much as we can stay away from them with the forceps, the better shape they're going to be in for our imaging. And it is quite important to get most of this stuff out, because if you don't, especially this long stringy stuff, it just ends up laying across structures that you're trying to image later on, which makes things difficult. So again, here I'm just perfusing some new saline in and out in order to get rid of all the chunks that I've pulled out that are floating in our dissection medium. And we're going to go ahead and take that ventral nerve cord out, which you can see right there quite clearly now. And we're going to grab that, and we're going to pull it towards the posterior side. Again, this is a time to be very careful not to poke any of these high muscles up here. Okay, now we're going to start pinning the animal back out. I usually give it a little bit more stretch anterior to posterior, since we kind of relieve some stress in order to get the material out. And then we're going to come in with our side pins. And we're adding some tension to the prep. You can see the muscles below kind of stretching a little bit, but we're not trying to stretch it extra hard. And basically, you kind of just have to get a feel for this. But most of the times, if it's done right, you should end up with a fairly nice kind of square pelt with a little bit of a head and tail sticking out either end. I'm just playing with the light here so you can see some of the muscles. You can now very clearly see muscles 6 and 7 running down, not the midline, but just distal to the midline. Again, here you can see some of the muscles better. And in a second here, I'm going to point out the different segments. This is segment A2, I'm pointing to A3, segment A4, so these are the repeated segmental patterns of muscles. And then I'm right along 6-7 is where the forceps were running right there. You can see 7's a little thinner and closer to the midline, and 6 is thicker and further away from the midline. So if we zoom out, our prep should look like this, and at this point we would perfuse in the fixative.